Hello and welcome along to another Tune Under podcast special. This is going to be a little bit of a crammed episode. We planned on doing a nice, gentle review of last night's game against Tranmere and a bit of a preview for the Wolves game coming up. And everything's going to get a bit batshit crazy. Newcastle is doing Newcastle things, and everything's kind of blowing up now with transfer gossip. So we're going to start things off with that. Joining me tonight is Jack and Craig. How are you guys doing?
Very good. Another exciting 24 hours in the life of a Newcastle fan.
It was good news to wake up to it at 4 o'clock this morning to watch the game, to see that Isak was on his way to Tyneside. More than happy with that.
Well, I got this news like before I went to bed, and I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to sleep now?
Me too.
It's like the Geordie dentist was ongoing. It's like, oh, well, this is going to be a non-productive day as I constantly refresh Twitter. It's like, yeah, you've got it easy. I've got to try and sleep now. So anyway, yeah, but we'll get on to the Tranmere game, the Cup game, and the Wolves game. But yeah, let's kick things off with what is been a bit of a mental 24 hours, if we're completely honest. We've gone from pretty much sort of thinking that Joao Pedro is in the bag for a relatively decent fee. We seem to have agreed the fee. Then it was all sort of knocked back on social media, and no one's really sure exactly where that stands anymore. And then boom, out of the blue, Alexander Isak bid submitted, accepted, like club record transfer fee, £60 million plus from Real Sociedad. I think this has kind of taken most of us by surprise and is a bit of a tick of approval of the current regime and how they're doing business, and that it shines a bit of a light on a lot of the in the knows and a lot of the gossip and a lot of the sort of the reports that have been leaked being complete and utter bollocks, really. Let's be honest. It's like nobody seemed to know anything about this one coming through. So I think a lot of people have lost a lot of credit on this one. Jack, I'm going to start with you though. Player-wise, the guy looks like he is a potential star in the making. He's obviously not the finished deal yet, but 6'4", pacey. He's only 22, scores a lot of goals on the run, a lot of poached goals as well. Very good dribbling, good with both feet. Didn't have a great year in Spain last year. But what's your first impressions of this bid? Not only just the size of it, but for the player itself and what statement that makes.
Well, I'm just pleased that the owners have finally listened to all of the people who were tagging them on Twitter, asking them why they weren't spending the money. But no, it did come out of the blue, really. But he had been linked earlier in the summer. Luke Edwards had raised his name and said we're after him. But then the fee was kind of thought to be around the 80 to 100 million mark, which was thought to be too much. To be honest, because we've been doing so much about FFP and, you know, the restrictions and what can we spend and what can we not spend, I was sold on Joao Pedro, so I was really excited about him. And then Fabrizio Romano did tweet his "Here we go" on that, so that seems like it might still happen.
And did Bruno?
Yeah, and Bruno did as well. But my first kind of reaction, because I've been thinking about FFP and everything, was I hope they know what they're doing and spending this amount of money. But then my second reaction was, I just trust them. You know, they know what they're doing. Ashworth and Howe know what they're doing. I remember watching Isak play in Euro 2020, and he was really, really fantastic. He really stood out. He didn't have a great season last season, like you just said. He only scored 6 league goals, but the season before that, he got 17 league goals in 34 games.
Yeah.
And he's got pretty much a 1-3 record in La Liga. And he's also got 9 goals in 37 for Sweden. And he's only 22. You know, he's played for Borussia Dortmund before. He looks like a modern striker, quick, agile, knows how to score goals, can play in a few different roles. He likes to drop deep. He's good at pressing. So, you know, he's been identified by our club as somebody who's going to come in and do a job and who's worth spending this money on. It's probably been accelerated potentially by Callum Wilson getting injured, which everyone knew was going to happen anyway. So I'll be interested to see if we do still go for Pedro, because I think at this stage spending 85 million or thereabouts on 2 strikers would seem unlikely when we still need a right-sided attacker and maybe a central midfielder. But, you know, Newcastle are smashing the transfer record on a striker, 60 million. Given what we've been through in recent seasons, you just have to, like, you know, pinch yourself and wake up. Sometimes it's amazing what the club's doing now, and it's such an exciting time. So let's keep it going, and let's hope he can come in and do what we hope he can. But I think as well, the last thing I just want to say is that I hope fans are patient with him as well, because he's only 22. It's a big price tag. He's apparently a streaky player, so he can score lots of goals, then he can miss chances. So we just need to be patient with him, give him time, trust that the coaching's going to work for him, and then watch him go.
Yeah, definitely that whole streaky thing, and the fact that he had a bad season last season, whether or not that was expectation, whether or not it was combined factors. I've read things on social media where people have actually done a really good rundown of the player himself and what his record's been. It looked to me from what people were saying is that last year didn't really reflect the chances that he had. He was very unlucky where, like, you know, some of the shots that could have or should have gone in weren't dropping for him. But yeah, as you said, it's like that's definitely been pointed out that he's a very streaky player, and he'll score lots of goals in a run and then go on a really barren patch. That's not something that we really want ideally, but you know, you're hoping that long term, as you said, he's 22, he's still young, still quite raw, I think, as well. If you can combine, I mean, everyone's referring to him as like a unicorn because he's tall and he's good with the ball at his feet and he's comfortable with both feet, and you know, he's good dribbling, and you know, you want to see that sort of player. And you know, the thought of him and Maxi, and if we do get like another pacey right winger on the break, that sounds absolutely delightful to me. I don't know about anyone else, but Craig, like he certainly, as Jack said, we need to have that patience with this sort of player. He's 22. He's not like this ready-made like 30-goal a season striker. He could be, but we need to be patient with him. He needs to be able to fit into the side. We've spoken, even if we've spoken on our group chat, that even if he does sign, the likelihood of him playing against Wolves is actually pretty low, even if he does sign in time. But Craig, what's your first thoughts of this player? And obviously you're as buzzing as everyone that, you know, we're about to potentially break our club record transfer fee, which stands at Joe Linton, I think, at the moment. Still, he's still our most expensive player. If he turns out to be anything like the bargain that Joe Linton seems to be now, let's just hope he doesn't have to wait another 2 seasons. But I feel Howe will get the most out of him. But yeah, let us know your feelings, because yeah, buzzing times.
It genuinely is it. And just like Jack said, you feel like you got to pinch yourself. I mean, where we were this time last year, struggling to get a £1 million loan fee for a Leicester reject, effectively. And now we are spending 60 million on just one player, spending 200+ million in over the course of 2 windows. The window's not even shut yet. This is genuinely phenomenal dreamland stuff for us, something we never thought would happen in a million years. And when the news first broke of Isak, I think that's how it's pronounced, or Isak, back a few months ago, as Jack mentioned, straight on YouTube, checking out his skills and everything. And he did seem, like I said, a bit raw, a bit sloppy, total unfinished product, but the potential is obviously there. And you're absolutely right, we do need to be patient with him. It could take a good few months. It might even take a season before he gels in properly. But everyone's been saying the same about Darwin Núñez at Liverpool as well, and he cost 80 million. He's by far the unfinished product. He got slaughtered in pre-season for having a few dodgy games, then goes and scores on his Premier League debut. So, you know, he's not a high profile as Núñez is, but in terms of value and fee, he could be the next big thing. We just watched a little video that was shared by Bobby from Sky Sports, and one of the blokes there likened him to a young Thierry Henry. As far as I'm concerned, praise doesn't get much better than that. If we can get a player half as good as Henry, then we've got a world beater on our hands. And hopefully he's here for the long term as well, because I just cannot wait to see him in that black white shirt.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to just, you know, just never thought we'd be back to the days where we're breaking records of club transfer fees and actually signing all these top-notch players that other clubs are actually interested in as well. It's not. I mean, Arsenal's been in sort of a little bit of tentative inquiries about Isak, whatever we're going to call him. But they've a lot of the players that we're buying now, all the top clubs are after, and that's really exciting that we're going after this top talent and landing them, and we're building a really good young squad as well. Let's not pretend that we're not building an absolute team of giants as well, because this guy's 6'4". We've just signed Botman, who's 6'6". We've got Dan Burn at 6'7". We seem to be getting some pretty big players in the squad. So you're kind of hoping that at some point this starts paying dividends with some nice set pieces. But the one thing, sorry.
So I was just going to say, it's interesting, the profile of player as well is like I said, young players, but he fits into the wage structure as well, which is really important. They've obviously done the due diligence on his character as well. So there was an article in The Athletic, I think it was about a week ago, but it was talking about the criteria that Newcastle had for the signings, and that's what Ekitike fit into, and it's what Isak fits into. And we maybe have overpaid a little bit because we had to do that to get him to come and to get Sociedad to accept the offer. But it looks like a fantastic signing. And the club, like I said, have done their due diligence on his character. They know that they know who they're getting. He looks like he could do with bulking out a bit as well. But again, he's only 22. So if you can do that, and if you can add that strength, he's apparently not that good in the air, which is again surprising for someone of his height. But if they can coach that into him, get him to bulk out, what a player we could have on our hands.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, you say it's maybe we've overpaid, but that's what everyone's going for at the moment. I mean, Chelsea's on about paying 60 million for Gordon. I know who's potentially the better player there. I mean, Gordon dives a lot. Yeah, he's great at that. I mean, he should be in the sort of the Olympics for the gymnasts, the way he dives. But they're willing to spunk 60 million on him for a centre forward of this guy's caliber. I mean, and potential. I don't think that's bad at all. And you, as you said, look at Nunez to Liverpool and how much they paid for him. I don't think it's that out of the realms of possibility. I mean, yes, it's overpaying, but so is everyone else. If we want to sign players, I think maybe the owners have finally twigged that, well, hang on, everyone else is willing to pay these figures. If we don't, we're not going to sign anyone.
And we could have benefited from the fact he didn't have a great season numbers-wise last season as well. Because if he did, then you're looking at top European clubs. Because his season before was fantastic, and his Euros was brilliant, and he was banging them in before that. So, and like you said, he did underperform his XG. He underperformed that a bit last season. But there was reasons for that. Like I read that Sociedad were playing a more defensive game, and also they had Soloth, the striker, in, so he wasn't playing that forward role on his own sometimes. So that's just what I've read. Like there were reasons for that. So you trust our coaches to get the best from him.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I guess the big question this raises is, are we still in for Pedro? Is that still going to be a deal that we're looking to pursue? Craig, do you reckon that that's still going to go? Or are we now, we need to spend money elsewhere? Because it's a lot of money to sort of put on two players.
It is
effectively playing the same.
I think we'll pull a plug on that one. I think we'll maybe put that funds towards a traditional style winger rather than a centre forward who can maybe adopt that position if we have to. Somebody who's now outright winger. Who that person would be, absolutely no idea. Like I say, 24 hours, we had no idea Isak was on his way. So they're obviously doing work in the background, I reckon. Other places, obviously, centre midfield, as Jack mentioned before. That could be somewhere that they look to invest into. But yeah, I think we'll pull a plug. I think that money for Pedro was the Ekitike money, really, wasn't it? It was virtually the same fee. So the money is probably still there. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe they've got a little bit more. Maybe they found a few extra $1 million down the back of the sofa. Who knows? But yeah, the money will be reinvested into a winger. Whether it'll be Pedro, I would rather it not be Pedro because he's not a traditional style winger. He is a forward, which is great to have, and somebody who can play multiple positions. But I'd rather have somebody who is playing in the natural position rather than out of it.
Pedro does seem a player that is comfortable in a couple of positions, though, and he does work hard. So you're going to get him tracking back. You're going to get him pressing, which is all tick boxes as far as I'm concerned for the Eddie Howe style of play, which is what we're trying to do. Jack, what's your opinion?
Well, I got really excited about Pedro because even though I hadn't signed him, I trusted Fabrizio Romano that it was happening. So, and the Watford fans were absolutely unanimous in their praise for Pedro on Twitter. He's a player that's really impressed them. Out of the 3 attackers they had, that was the one they wanted to least sell. So I don't know if we're going to spend that money, if he can be played out to the wide, or if we might be going to a system. If we might be thinking of a system with 2 strikers or like a second striker, then it would maybe make sense. For the long term, it would make sense because he seems like a fantastic talent. I hope we still get him, but I understand that with this outlay on Isak, we might not. And there are other priority positions, like Craig said, which is specifically a winger. But we might get a winger on loan. There's talk about Pulisic lately as well. So if we could get him on loan, and Gallagher in central midfield. So if we could get a couple of loans in, there'd still be a fee involved there, but that would free up maybe this cash to go and get Pedro. And the other attraction about Pedro is he doesn't come into the 25-man squad because he's young. So he would fall into the Anderson camp of being in the first team, but not in that 25-man squad, which might be important because we're going to talk later about injury. There was an injury to Kraft in the game, and we might need that squad space for maybe Manquillo potentially. So that might be an important factor as well. But I hope we still get Pedro, but I'll understand if we don't now.
Yeah, it's going to be tight to fit everyone in. And I think we've been fed all of this stuff, as you said, with the financial fair play, and we've got a modest budget to spend, and we've literally blown all that out the water with one potential signing. So how much we put down to sort of a little bit of gamesmanship in terms of trying to manage expectations in terms of transfer fees, and we go out and we've still got plenty of money up our sleeves to go out and buy more players. Basically none of us know anymore. I think that's the one thing that's come from this, is just like nobody seems to know anything, and everyone that's been reporting on stuff has been talking out their ass, and it's just hilarious to see. I mean, so one of the big moves, I guess, from Chelsea was Callum Hudson-Odoi, much to Craig's dismay, has actually gone to Bayer Leverkusen. So that's a big move for him, potentially good. I wonder if there's any possibility that frees up an opportunity to get Diaby from them as well. Jack, do you reckon there's any chance that that's back on again?
Well, they've had a bad start to the season apparently as well. So, but again, I just can't see us spending 50 million on another player after we've already spent 60 on Isak and 35 on Botman.
I see us spending 60 million on a player anyway. So
we know that next season we'll be getting sponsorship money coming in. So we know that we've now got a couple of players that we might be able to sell, which we didn't have previously. So next summer we might be able to raise money like that. Maybe they're just going to think, let's just stack the squad now completely and make it as good as it can possibly be, and then have a few quiet windows coming up while we sort the commercial stuff out. But I'd be amazed if we spent that much money on another young international this summer. But then again, I didn't think we were going to sign Isak. So
exactly, yeah.
I don't know.
I think this deal and this amount of money is really like throwing everything out, and it's kind of like, well, who really knows anymore? I guess for the Diaby move, though, maybe it is just a case of, look, we've started the season really well. If we can keep pushing on, there is an outside chance that we will get European qualification. And maybe they're seeing that going, well, let's just like blow a bit more now, get those young, and it's not like we're buying like a 30, 32-year-old to come in for a lot of money. We're buying young, like hungry talent that are only going to get better. So, you stack them out, and then you fill up the reserves and you bring players through while those are becoming the established players, and you build up that sponsorship deal. I mean, obviously, Craig, you're a massive fan of Hudson-Odoi. You're a bit gutted, but would a big move for another right winger sort of appease your anger and disappointment?
Well, if Hudson-Odoi gets me twitchy, Diaby gets me proper frothy. Genuinely, That would just be the icing on the cake and the cherry on top of that as well. Because if you imagine a front three running at you with Diaby, ASM, and Callum Wilson when fully fit, that's terrifying for any defence. Don't care who you are. But yeah, that gets me proper frothing at the gills. That really does. And I know we just briefly mentioned his name before, Conor Gallagher. I've been a big advocate for him to come to the tune since we started this pod back in November. And if we can get him, because he is a step above Willock and Longstaff right now, then that would just top the window off as just being an absolute sensational one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the big things that seems to be causing a bit of a stir on social media at the moment is the bid that West Ham have just put in for Lucas Paqueta. I think a lot of, mainly just for the Bruno links, and a lot of people had their hearts set on him joining. He's playing in Bruno's back garden and he's wearing a Newcastle top, and everyone got a little bit excited at the end of last season. That move hasn't materialized. Lyon seem pretty receptive to offers, and they seem to be trying to kind of get him out and make some money off him while they can. Now, this is a guy that is probably playing more regularly for the Brazil national squad than Bruno is. Obviously a talented player, still young, still very hungry, still works his ass off the ball to win the ball back, as well as was going forward. Arguably a better player than Bruno by all accounts, and is a player that we went in for before we actually bought Bruno. So there's definitely loads of links there. How much is it going to disappoint a lot of fans? Jack, I'll start with you. If we miss out on Paqueta, is it going to be this drama that everyone makes it out to be? Or is it just a case of like we've all been sold on the romance of this story, but in actual fact, it doesn't really matter if he goes somewhere else?
Well, first off, if he's better than Bruno, we should be trying to sign him, because Bruno is a phenomenon. But I think with Paqueta, it's a lot of 2 + 2 = 5. I know that we were reportedly interested in January, but I just think it's something the fans have got hold of. He's an exotic name. He's Brazilian. He's Bruno's friend. He's obviously a quality player, but I just think I'm not sure how serious our interest post-January has actually been. I'm not bothered really. I think if he comes, great, but I'm not going to be upset about it. Maybe some fans will be upset about it, but I think those fans just need to look at where we were before and where we are now, before getting wound up about anything like that. I think that I thought this was maybe one for towards the end of the window if other things hadn't come off and if we still had some money. And that's kind of how it seemed it was going, because we could have just had him if we'd have wanted. Although apparently West Ham have had a 40 million bid rejected or a 35 million bid. So it's not like Lyon they're asking for good money for him as well. Yeah. So it again, as with everything, if Eddie Howe doesn't want him, then I trust him entirely. And there's something about him they weren't entirely sold on. So
yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, as you said, if we wanted him, then you'd imagine he'd have been here already. Whether or not they've just been waiting out the market, I mean, the reports that have been coming out have been that West Ham have submitted a bid. His agent's in London at the moment talking to their representatives, but apparently still talking to other clubs while he's in London. Maybe there's other clubs that are still sort of, sniffing around, trying to sort of see if he fits into their system and that. And so maybe we're still one of those. We don't know. Craig, obviously it is a big, it's a big heart sob story that he's Bruno's mate. But realistically, if we get, other players in other positions that are probably a more prioritized position right now for us, are you going to be that disappointed? Obviously, this is going to very much depend on if we blow 60 million on Isak and he really doesn't do well in the Premier League and Paqueta goes to West Ham and blows everyone away and ends up being this absolute superstar, then everyone's going to point the finger and go, we should have had him, we could have had him, why didn't we get him? It's always that ifs, buts and maybes, but do you see a big issue here, or are you happy to move on and go somewhere else?
absolutely happy to move on. I think, like Jack said, if we wanted to get him, we would have had him by now. If the interest in January was that concrete, he would have been like Botman. He would have been a long-term target. I think we would have got him in earlier in the window. But obviously that just never materialized. And yeah, we needed to strengthen the defense before we got other priorities after that in terms of attacking. But yeah, I'm more than happy for the club to move on from him if there was any strong interest in there. I've got all the faith in the world in Eddie and his backroom staff to find the right players, to find the right character and do what they can do without, again, having to spunk 40, 50 million euros, whatever it may be, on another player just because the fans think he'll be a good match next to Bruno. I'd rather bring in somebody else who may be a better fit for the club.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that. The last bit of transfer news that is doing the rounds at the moment is apparently Man United have submitted an offer for Martin Dubravka. Apparently it's a loan move that they want to loan him. Why Dubravka would entertain moving from apparent backup to Pope to apparent backup to De Gea is anyone's guess. It's a loan move, so it's not like he's going to get a massive pay rise. They're not in the Champions League, so he's not getting Champions League potential football. This move makes absolutely zero sense. And after the mess around that we had over Henderson and over Lingard, I would like us to try and take the piss. And B, I just don't see why this benefits either the player or the club for this to be a deal. Jack, do you see this? Do you see this going anywhere? Because apparently there are legs in this as well.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. I don't get where this is coming from.
There's been whispers since Pope signed that, and his agent has said something that Dubravka is not entirely happy about this. But I agree that I just don't see what the sense in a loan move is unless there's a substantial fee and maybe an obligation to buy at the end. For Dubravka, maybe he wants a new challenge. That's fair enough. He's getting towards the end of his career now. Maybe he wants to go and play for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Maybe he thinks he's got more chance of getting game time in the Europa League than he does at Newcastle. But it doesn't really, I mean, he's been a good servant for us, but it doesn't really say that much for a player's character if they just want to leave as soon as they get a bit of competition in. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if he was allowed to go there on loan. If it was a permanent deal for a decent fee, then that's different. I know that a lot of people will be very unhappy if Darlow is the second choice keeper. I don't think Darlow is great, but by the same token, I'm not going to be too upset about that because he's unlikely to need to play, and everything else the club has done has been stunning, and probably will be in the last week of the window as well. So that's my sort of take on that. I hope Dubravka does stay and fight for his place. I wouldn't be that surprised if he goes. But yeah, like you said, Man United took the piss with us in January, so maybe we want to try and keep relations with them cordial now, because we might have to do business with them in the future. And it's maybe a bit self-defeating if we just go upsetting clubs, but there's no reason why we should do a favour for them after what they did in January, and because we still need a decent backup keeper as well.
Look, I'm not one of these that thinks Darlow is a bad keeper. I just don't think he is capable of maintaining a standard for a prolonged period of time. I think when he's come in and he's been called on because of an injury and he knows he's like in that spot, he seems a lot more calm. I think if he's fighting for that spot, he gets nervous and he makes silly mistakes. That's always been my kind of overview of what his time at this club has been. I will be very disappointed in Dubravka, if he decides that, no, I don't want to fight for my place. I want to go and sit on the bench at another club. If he's going somewhere and he was going there because he wanted to be, the number one keeper somewhere else and he wanted game time ahead of the World Cup, totally get that. But if he's not going somewhere where he's guaranteed first team football, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. Craig, like, are you happy with Dubravka? Do you think there's any talk that this might actually be just agent talk trying to get a new contract for him as well?
It could be, but he's got 33 now. I'm not sure how long he's got left on his current deal. Goalkeepers, they reach their peak a little bit later than outfield players. So you might get maybe 36, 37 out of a keeper before they decide to retire. But he's not going to be fighting for that number one spot with this type of attitude. If it is coming from him directly, if he's saying I want to leave because I can't be asked to put up a fight, then I'd rather him go, because then that's just setting a bad example for everybody else, and not just one bad egg in the rest of the box, And Eddie's all about that player attitude, and I think if he does go and we rinse Man United for every penny they've got, didn't they want to charge like 25 million for Lingard over 6 months? Something like that? It was a 10 million pound loan fee and then pay his wages and shit like that. All right, if that's the case, then we double it. Genuinely. We rip them for every single penny they've got. They've got money in spades. They've just spent however much money on Casemiro. So they've definitely got it. I reckon if he wants to go, let him. But we take them for every penny they have. Not really bothered about keeping good pals with other clubs. If you want to piss another club off, piss them off. It doesn't bother me. In a few years' time, I can see us probably overtaking Man United in terms of league position. We might even do it this season. Who knows? And if that is the case, that'll piss a lot of those Mancs off, and it'll just make us Geordies so goddamn happy. But it'll be the first time we finish with Man United in league and we don't win it. How annoying would that be?
Yeah. No, I think it's one of those things where I would prefer to see a fully committed Darlow that is happy to fight for his place and try and grab his opportunities when he gets them, than to try and keep a player who isn't happy being here and doesn't really want to be a part of it. And I think it's exacerbated by growing up watching Newcastle in a time where we had Shay Given and Steve Harper both fighting for that position. And yes, okay, maybe it's different because Steve Harper was a local lad and he was happy to be at the club. But he never, he could have walked into a lot of clubs in the Premier League if he'd chosen to leave, and he stayed. They fought each other and they kept each other on their toes as well, and we benefited from that big time. So yeah, for me, it's just it's a bit of a bad taste if Dubravka does leave under these circumstances. If he does, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If we don't push on this season, we'll get another keeper coming through. We've just signed a really promising lad from up in Scotland to come through, and he's already been training with the senior players apparently. So we've got players coming through. We've got Darlow. Look, if Gillespie has to play because we've got injuries, then we've probably got more problems than just Dubravka leaving. So
I think just on Dubravka, just to say as well, he's been a good player for us for 4 years now, and
definitely.
If he does go, I'll never forget that debut for him against Man United. He was outstanding, and at the time, I remember people were saying to Rafa, "Why are you buying a new keeper? You've got some decent keepers." But Rafa knew he needed a better keeper, and Dubravka has saved us quite a lot of times over the years. Yeah. So, I agree with what you're saying about it. It will leave a bit of a bitter taste, but if he gets to this point and he wants to move, whatever his reasons might be, I don't think we should do Man United a favour by any means. But if the deal works for us as well, then I think you'll go with our blessing and with our thanks for his service over the time, which has been pretty good.
But the other thing that doesn't get me as well, sorry on that one, is Man United know they've been after another keeper for backup, yet they send Henderson out on loan to Forest.
He was unhappy, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think he wanted game time, though.
It's crazy at the minute the way Man United's run. They could recall Henderson, I believe, at any time and have that backup keeper, and then Forrester in the shit. And
they're stabbing in the dark, that club, at the moment.
Shambles, yeah.
They really are, yeah. They're literally falling to the bottom of the well, and there's no way up for them. And long may it continue for them, to be honest. But yeah, I don't understand that logic of sending a keeper out on loan who's 25 years old. He's probably still got at least another 10 years left in him, probably still to hit his peak. And you then want to bring the 33-year-old who just wants to sit on the bench? It makes no sense. Really doesn't.
Yeah. No, there's just weird things going on at that club in terms of their overall plan of attack, in terms of they're throwing money at players, or they're trying to sign names just to appease fans at the moment and tick the boxes that they've signed another player, without any kind of addressing of the underlying issues of why they are where they are. And it's not going to fix the problem. They're just going to spend more money, and they're going to have the same issues because they're signing players who either are only moving there for the money, or they're only moving there because they want to kind of see out their career, or they're no one like Casemiro. He's not moving there because he's wanting to challenge for stuff at the moment. He's moving there because he's getting a dirty great paycheck. He's not going to get in the Real Madrid side anymore because they want to move on because he's getting old. And Man United are signing old players, and they don't have the luxury anymore of having that golden generation of players that they have to rely on as the core of their team, where they can afford to just dick around and buy players just to stop other players buying them or just to make a statement signing. They need players that are going to play on the pitch and have the right attitude, and they don't have that right now.
They needed Dan Ashworth, basically, but they can't have ours. So Kieran Maguire told us that they actually tried to make him an offer after he'd already agreed to come to us. But yeah,
or they needed Ralph Ragnick, but they needed to put him into a director of football role rather than get him and put him into a manager position and then sack him after however many months it was because he wasn't able to turn everything around in a flick of a magic wand. Anyway, enough of Man United. This is a Newcastle podcast. So yes, a bit of a crazy whirlwind of transfer speculation and bids and all of that sort of stuff. That is not what we intended on this podcast. This was going to be a review of last night's game in the Carabao Cup. So we will be back and we'll start on our match review. Right then, so back into the swing of things. Now back onto the original track of this podcast in 36 minutes in. Nothing like a nice short episode again. So obviously Newcastle played away at Tranmere in the Carabao Cup last night. Well, 4:30 this morning, Australian time. I did not watch it live. I have watched the extended highlights. So I'm going to be relying on Jack and Craig to kind of shed a little bit more light on the overall aspects of the game. But basically, the game started off. Tranmere did start with some pace in the game. They really got at Newcastle. But Murphy seemed to have the first shot on goal. He was through on goal. It was a really weak shot. Didn't have a lot of power behind it. Seemed to kind of just flap at it. And then literally minutes later, Murphy had another shot. Takes on a shot that literally was never on in the first place, went high and wide, and then Anderson was left in space and had a shot and literally just pulled it wide, sort of onto the left of the upright. He was kind of not really closed down as much as he was. And then after those three chances, Nevitt for Tranmere, they broke really, really well, exposed us at the back. They were in acres of space and they did their best to kind of mess it up, I have to say, from the replays. It wasn't exactly the crispest of passes through, but Nevitt managed to get that ball into the back of the net. Newcastle go a goal down. We did kind of push back straight away. Elliot Anderson, again involved, had a header. It was deflected out for a corner. And then by this stage, Kraft had already gone off injured. Trippier was on, took the corner, perfect ball through. Lascelles' header, sporting a broken nose by that stage as well. So he still headed the ball, bounced back off a defender straight to him, powered the rebound back into the top of the net. Equalized goal. I saw the manager for Tranmere was complaining that there was potential blocks and pushes. Nothing to mention about the GBH that his players were inflicting on the Newcastle players, but a block, we've got to complain about that one. And then just before halftime, there was a bit of a contentious decision with a massive challenge, that horrendous studs up challenge onto Darlow, who was in goal. And for those that are watching on YouTube, we're going to put this on. Apologies for those listening on the audio streams, but this is the challenge itself in slow motion. And you can see Darlow's leg buckle there as well as it comes through. The ball's clearly gone by that stage. The player comes through, studs up challenge straight into Darlow. It's given as a foul, as a yellow card. In my opinion, he is late to that tackle. That is a clear red card challenge in anyone's book. Craig, what do you make of that?
At first, I thought it was more of a 50-50 challenge when I seen it in real time. But then when I seen the replays and from different angles, like what you've just shown there, yeah, it's a clear leg breaker. And Darlow's lucky to be able to continue the game, let alone walk away from it. It was just seeing his leg bend there is horrific. But yeah, it's bad. It was an instant red card, and that's where VAR is unfortunately missed but needed. Even in the lower ends of the competition, whether it be round 2, round 3, wherever. Be interesting to know if it's implemented at St James's in the third round fixture. But yeah, that should be an instant red card.
Yeah, Jack, you agree with that?
Yeah, it was a definite red card. Like Craig, on first sight, it just looked like a 50-50, but it could have broken his leg, It's when you play these kinds of teams, like you don't mind the referee letting it go, but you don't blame the opposition for being aggressive firstly, because that's probably a good way to get in the big Premier League team's face and unsettle them a bit. Yeah. But there has to be a balance where the referees sort of protect players to an extent. This ref just let a lot go. There was only one yellow card in the whole game, and it was that, and that should have been a red, and there could have been a couple of other yellows. We had Kraft injured, which I'm not sure. I don't think that was from a tackle, but he went off injured, and Lascelles broke his nose. But I don't know if I say the name Jason Whittle to you, if you remember him. Grimsby v Newcastle in about 2005. Him and Shearer had a bit of a running battle in the League Cup. And he, I think he headbutted Shearer or something. I think it was Jason Whittle or it was Justin Whittle. But yeah, there was a running battle there, and he wanted to make a name for himself. And the game reminded me of that, where it was just kind of thug tactics from a lower league team. Really difficult game.
We'll definitely come on and have a chat about the tactics of the Tranmere players, definitely. So what was your impression of the first half, Jack? Give us your overview of what was going on.
It was a hard game, yeah. Like they made it tough. They're a League 2 team, a smallish ground. They were up for it. They scored a really, really nice goal. Probably the best bit of football, other than Kieran Trippier, who probably the best bit of football of the whole game was their goal. We were caught out a little bit, and you've got like early cup round PTSD from down the years from Newcastle. So you just think when that happens. And we'd made 10 changes as well from the Man City game. So Willock was the only player who still stayed in the team. And you want the players to come in like the Longstaff, Murphy. You want these players, Chris Wood. You want them to make an impression and stake a claim. But it was a hard game to do that in, and they weren't able to do that, I don't think. And we were lucky. Yeah. So in terms of the first half, I was pleased we went in level, and I was just hoping that there was going to be no more injuries or sort of incidents in the second half, especially to our actual first team players.
Craig, what was your impression of the first half?
Anderson was probably the call-out player for us. He was all over the pitch. He had the odd shot. Again, I think it was his header that created the corner for the first goal. He was definitely the best. I think some of the players, they were maybe afraid to get the ball because they were going to get lumps kicked out of them. And they just try to get rid of it as soon as they got it. And because we were panicking in the pass, we were giving up possession too easy. And that just then allowed them to do what they need to do and intimidate us a little. But yeah, their goal was well worked, although I do think we were slow in defence. If you watch it back again, Longstaff looks like he's running with a fridge on his back. He's just so slow in tracking. But I think it was a fair scoreline to go in at 1-1. They had a cracking chance there. They took it in Lascelles. It was almost a carbon copy of his goal against Everton last season, if you remember. It's in James's, similar type of thing.
Yeah.
But now it was a fair result at halftime, 1-1.
No, that's fair enough. Moving on to the second half, obviously we got a corner from Murphy, and Trippier takes the corner, and perfectly weighted ball in from the corner. Chris Wood meets it. I love the fact that the commentator said it was an own goal. No, quite clearly off Wood's head. Perfectly weighted header into the goal. I'm so pleased for Chris Wood because he does get a lot of stick for not scoring goals. And yes, it's only Tranmere Rovers. It's a League 2 team, but he still put the ball in the net. He still scored the winner that it turned out to be. And I'm really pleased for him because he does so much work off the ball and he doesn't get the credit he needs from... I mean, when he came on against Man City, he did so much defensive work that saw that game out for us. And no one talks about that. but he managed to get on the score sheet, so I'm happy enough with that. Willock had a half chance, but it was obvious that we came out and we stepped it up a notch in terms of the pace of the game. We seemed to get a little bit more control of the game. Whether or not that's Premier League fitness, just running over a League Two side that just isn't quite at that level at the moment, or whether or not Newcastle did just come out and went, right, we need to get this by the scruff of the neck and really push on. Willock again, and another chance. He seemed lively without necessarily enforcing himself onto the game as much as he possibly should have been to stake that claim. Anderson had another volley on target from a corner, which went a little bit wide. Anderson did look lively. I think out of all the players that looked like they were supposedly trying to stake a claim for being involved in the first team, Anderson probably stood out to me from the extended highlights at least, as one of the players that really was up for that game and had that little bit of quality as well, and was just missing that final touch. But obviously, it was one of those games, as Craig said, where players didn't get the time because of the way Tranmere were playing. Look, Wood had a and I have just praised Wood for this, but he did have a second chance. He was put through on goal. He actually took it really well, and was in on stride. And how much of that's down to him not being able to get around the defender because he's not quick enough. But, it was a good save, and I'm happy enough to say that it was a good save. And then just to finish the game off, Botman had a header and another good save by the keeper. We've created chances in this game. We could have probably scored more. I'm happy we didn't, because I can gloat to Lee and Nostradimi that I pulled the right prediction result out for this one, for a 2-1 win. But, look, it's never going to be easy when you make that many changes against a lower league opposition that are basically allowed to kick lumps out of you without any punishment. So in terms of the second half performance being a little bit more upbeat, a little sort of some more chances being created, Craig, what did you make of that? Do you think we probably deserved a few more goals given the performance in the second half?
Yeah, I actually thought Botman's head, I thought that was in. I cheered as if it already crossed the line. But then when I seen the tip over the bar, I was devastated for him. It was a cracking header. We did probably deserve a third goal, but you need to commend their keeper, to be honest, because he did put in some cracking shot stops. And the team that finished the game, it makes you wonder if you would actually start with that team in the next round effectively, if that Palace are going to field a weakened team as well, just so you can see the game out before it drags on to those later stages of the game where it starts to feel uncomfortable. Because Newcastle being Newcastle, you're never even now comfortable with a 2-1 lead, regardless of who we're playing. I think, I can't remember who it was we played in the League Cup, I think, or the FA Cup a few years back, where St. Maximin got the winner and the bloke got the penny-copter out. And, that was what we were 2-0 up there, then it went to 2-2 when we won it in extra time. I just had echoes of that happening again, and I did not want extra time and penalties. I'm not comfortable with us in extra time and penalties.
Jack, what was your overall opinion about second half?
Well, it was Kieran Trippier again. So it's not the first time he's done this, and he is such a class above. He was head and shoulders above every other player on that pitch for both teams. The moment he came on, he started creating chances, and he's got this thing that he does, which I don't know how he does this from right back, but he just controls the game completely. The games go through 15 to 20 minute spells where everything goes through him. He seems to know what to do, when to do it. He is the one who lifted the levels of everybody in that game. And if he hadn't have come on when he did, when Kraft got injured, I'm not sure that we would have actually come back and won the game. We might have seen Bruno and Joelinton a little bit earlier if Trippier hadn't come on. But I'm just amazed every time I see him that he actually plays for Newcastle. He's so good. And it's a shame he's just not a few years younger, because we might not get as much of him as we hope we're going to see. But it was another game that I'll just remember for the impact he had, and another game where I feel so deeply grateful that he plays for Newcastle, because everything about him is just world class. And it's maybe it sounds a bit overboard saying this against Tranmere, but he's done it before. He did it against Everton last season as well. So he's done it in the Premier League, and obviously his free kick against Man City was stunning. So that's what I'll really remember from this game, and the impact Trippier had. And it was we won, and that's all you can really ask for in these. And it was a difficult game. I think it's a hard one for people to come in. But yeah, we got the win, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, through to the next round. Palace at home. Happy enough with that. Let's see how far we can go in this competition this year. I guess one of the big talking points, and we've kind of already touched on it with the Darlow incident, is there didn't seem to be that protection of the players by the ref. And potentially this was a step above in terms of the profile of the game, because we were there and all eyes were on him, and it was on TV apparently as well. And so everybody complains every year that the early rounds of the Cup, none of the big teams take it seriously. They all rest their players. And you've got to wonder if a lot of that comes down to the fact that they're expecting refs to go, oh, we should let the physicality go because it's a lower league team. And they don't want to get their players injured. You know, we've got Lascelles with a broken nose from a flailing arm that wasn't given as a foul, let alone a yellow card. Kraft's gone off injured with a potential knee injury. We've got Darlow in goal, who could have easily had his leg broken. And, you know, you're sort of left sitting there thinking, well, this is a game that, you know, yes, be physical if that's your style of play, being, you know, robust on the ball, but don't go out to try and hurt people, because that's what it looked like from what I saw of the fewest incidents. I guess, you know, for me, it's like the authorities need to get on top of this if they don't want people to keep resting players. And a lot of the big clubs, like, you know, Liverpool, Man City, isn't that, they don't give a crap about the League Cup anymore. It's like, it's got no appeal to them. They've got squads that are probably big enough to like get through to the later rounds, and then they might start taking things a bit more seriously. But, you know, it's another cup. Yes, tick that box for them, but, you know, it's pretty low priority unless they're aiming to go for the quadruple or something monumental like that, like Liverpool were doing last year. Craig, how much of this is down to just a bad ref on the day, and how much of this is down to just a general malaise of calling those sorts of fouls on lower league teams because of the perception that that's how they play, and we can't let them have to be dictated to by the Premier League clubs, and a lack of VAR to kind of back up those sorts of really bad tackles that in any other game in the Premier League with VAR on, those would end up getting overturned or a red card or a foul or whatever. How much of that comes into those sorts of things?
Well, the ref, as I found out after the game, this was his first senior professional game. He normally referees under 21 games, which is, you're never going to get that level of physicality in an under 21 game. So whether it was a step above or whether he did just let the trying game flow, let the game try and flow, and not realizing the severity of the challenges until it was too late, whether you played the ball on it or already been advantage had been played and so on. But yeah, the VAR thing is massive. VAR was brought in to prevent things like that happening, to stop players from going in for potentially career-ending challenges or anything, because that's potentially what that could have been for Darlow. And if from round 2 in League Cup right through from even say round 3 of the FA Cup, when the Premier League teams start to get involved, or even in the lower rounds as well, it's massive, because it doesn't just protect the players, it protects the club as well, because it's a massive source of income for some of the lower league clubs as well, the cups, especially the FA Cup, because that gets global exposure much more than what the Carabao Cup does. And if you've got goal line technology, you've got VAR, you've got all that implemented, you're protecting everybody on there, the players and the clubs as well. And the lower league clubs would benefit from it, I think.
It's that deterrent, isn't it? I mean, Jack, so obviously like Kraft's gone off injured as well. We don't think that was anything to do with a bad tackle or anything, but, you know, now we've got Trippier that's had to come on miles earlier than what we would ideally have liked, given the fact that we've got so many games coming up in quick succession. You know, we've got these players, you know, we wouldn't have liked to have Botman on the pitch, but we had to take Lascelles off because he's playing with a broken nose. So, you know, how much do you think that this is affecting the standard of the games as well, because you want to see players, you want to see teams be able to sort of play to their strengths. You want to see teams be able to upset teams, but not take it to the extreme.
Yeah, I've got no problem with aggressive and physical and intimidating football. I think that's good. It's good, but it still has to be sort of reasonable, and it has to be. And if it isn't reasonable, that the players who are at risk of getting injured have to be protected by the officials, and that didn't happen. Maybe if the player who elbowed Lascelles had been booked or sent off, or if the player who tried to break Darlow's leg, seemingly, if he'd been sent off, maybe that might have made the others think twice about what they were doing. But I don't want to just be a big Premier League club complaining about rough treatment by a little League Two club, because you have to expect that. But it crossed the line quite a few times, and the referee should have tried to put a stop to it and tried to control it.
Yeah, if it's getting to the point where players are getting injured or at a high risk of getting injured, then you've kind of got to be thinking, that's the line in the sand. You can't be crossing that, because you're going to either, you're affecting, future games, if not people's careers. So.
And I'm well aware that probably next week Joe Linton's going to go and probably break someone's ankle or something, because he seems like he might be on the verge of doing that. So it will happen this season where we cross the line probably as well, and where we intimidate,
absolutely,
injure people. But at least in the Premier League, it'll be sort of treated.
It gets punishment, but it's also it'll be that one incident that just steps over because someone's been a little bit too enthusiastic, or they've missed time to tackle, or they've just gone in to try and win a ball. And we saw it at the weekend against Man City with Trippier. It was a professional foul, but there was no malice in it. There was never going to be there was nothing that was going to sort of break someone's leg. He's just brought him down. That's not what was happening in this game with Tranmere. There was incidents that were clearly intentionally or not setting about injuring a player, and that's kind of where it needs to sort of call the line off. So I guess the last things just to kind of cover. Look, it wasn't a comfortable win for us by any stretch of the imagination, but we've got through to the next round. We dominated set pieces in the second half. That's good to see. A little bit of extra quality would not go amiss. I think it's sort of painfully obvious that some of the backups have hearts of gold, and they'll work their socks off, and they'll run all day, but they just lack that little bit of extra quality that we really need. So yeah, hopefully our transfer window little bit at the beginning here sort of pull some of those players in that just lift the overall squad depth up a little bit more. So we'll call that off here, and we'll have a little bit of a break, and we'll come back for a very quick Wolves preview, since we are running massively behind with all of the crazy news that's going on. So we'll be right back. Right then, on to our Wolves preview, a whirlwind tour through our game out on Sunday. Now, we've got a few injury concerns. Obviously, our squad isn't as maybe deep as some of the bigger teams, but we do have some players to come in. We're going to just add this one in. So this is our expected lineup for the game. Wilson's out injured. Kraft's definitely out injured now as well. Dubravka may be on the go. So, he may be off to Man United. Fraser's struggling with an injury as well. So we are kind of starting to struggle a little bit with our depth and our people coming in. So we're potentially looking at Pope in goal, Botman, Shah in defence, Trippier and Target on the wing backs, or sort of the left and right back. Joe Linton, Willock, Bruno midfield again. I don't think Longstaff probably did enough against Tranmere to get that role. ASM Miggy on the wings with Chris Wood taking up the forward role. Jack, I'll let you kick things off with this one. What do you make of that team? Do you think that's probably what we're going to go for? And do you see any major dramas with that squad?
The only possible thing is Dan Burn, if he's not concussed anymore, whether he comes in at left back instead of Target, or maybe at centre back instead of Botman. But they'll probably just give him Target's fit now, and he had 45 minutes, so they'll probably just give him the Wolves game. Probably if Isak signs, I think he'll be on the bench if he signs on time, and I think Chris Wood will start because Wilson's definitely out. Yep. In the midfield, before the Tranmere game, I thought we might see Longstaff get a start against Wolves. I think Willock is really good at carrying the ball forward, and he's got good energy, and he's a good player to bring off the bench in games. I know he started the first 3 league games, but Longstaff can sometimes have that little bit more control of the ball in midfield, which I think we were missing against Brighton in that away game. But he didn't really do that much against Tranmere. But then neither did Willock, and then Willock had another start. So Longstaff probably got a bit fresher legs. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Longstaff came in to the midfield. Yeah. And the rest of it, I think, that'll be how we go. Itself. And we know we're gonna be playing this 4-3-3 system that's been working well. It's a difficult away game. It'll be a very different game to the Man City game. So I really hope we see Maxi have a good game, or if he's not having a good game and if he hasn't got that space, I hope we see him pop the ball off to people who are in space and show that maturity in his game, just to carry on from the Man City game when he was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, Willock's a strange one for me, and it's kind of Longstaff's got that better ball control and sort of tackling and keeping in that sort of formation a little bit better. Willock's a much more explosive player, runs all day, he's got the pace, and is probably a better finisher as well. You kind of almost want to merge them together because neither of them really do the job that we need them to do at the moment as well as we want them to do. Willock, for me, in terms of the game that we're playing, just doesn't have the ball skills. He's just not as comfortable on the ball and passing the ball as we really need him to be in that role right now next to Joe Linton and Bruno. Craig, what do you reckon of that team? And do you see anything being changed up or any concerns over that?
I think if Anderson didn't play the full 90 minutes, I thought, if anything, he could have been in with a shout over Willock or Longstaff because he outperformed both of them head and shoulders, I reckon. Target, he walks into the squad if he's fit, I think. He'll take Dan Burn's place. Not sure if they've come back with a concussion result from Dan Burn, but obviously you had no part at all, not even named in the squad for the Tranmere game. Botman and Shaw, they're going to start in defence. The other option would be Fernandez, who did actually make the bench for the Tranmere game, which is the first time he's been named all season, even pre-season, I think. Trippier, captain. The midfield picks itself on the wings. So ASM and Miggy and Joe Linton, Bruno, Willock and Chris Wood on his lonesome up front. Hopefully we can provide some crosses for him because, as Trippier showed, we put the ball in the box, he can finish it.
Yeah, no, definitely. The bench, from what we were talking about before, we're looking at a bench of Darlow, Lascelles, assuming he's back from his broken nose, Byrne, Manquillo, Ritchie, Anderson, Longstaff, Murphy. Maybe Isak if he joins in time. We don't know this. To me, apart from maybe Anderson, if he can come on and keep doing what he's been doing. Obviously, it's a big step up from playing against a League Two side to coming into the Premier League. So we still have to see that step up in class, I guess, from him. He's obviously got some talent. He's obviously got a nice attitude in terms of his work rate, and he wants to constantly improve. But there's not a lot of impact subs there at the moment. And that's a little bit of a worry for me. Jack, where do you see the changes being able to come from? If we sign a new striker for 60 million, you'd expect him to be on the bench and potentially maybe get a run out later on the game if there's a chance. But there's not a lot else there, is there?
No, the depth is an issue, and that's just where we're at in the evolution of the club at the moment. So, after the next few transfer windows, the bench will look stronger. Anderson is a really exciting talent, and it would have been nice to see him earlier in the season, but it just hasn't happened because of the state the game was in. But that's why I think Willock on the bench he's been good historically when he's come off the bench. So he might be a good option to have on there. And then I think if Isak signs in time, he'll definitely be on the bench, and I would think he would definitely get onto the pitch at some point. I just worry about Chris Wood being isolated in this game. That's what happened pretty much all of last season. Even though we were in a good run, he was very isolated. So the depth isn't great, but it's where we're at, and this is going to be a tough game though. if we can win, that'd be 8 points from the first 4, unbeaten, which would be amazing. But Wolves themselves haven't won a game yet. They've only scored 1 goal, but we'll have a look at their team in a minute. They've got some good players.
Yeah. I guess for us, like, our bench really is made up of hard workers that are going to put a shift in and they're going to make it competitive, but they don't have that extra level to their game where they're going to be able to threaten teams. And that's the big problem for me. Murphy's a prime example where he's got bags of pace and he's got loads of effort, but he's just, like, every time he gets in goal, he either hits the post or skies it, or, you know, he doesn't have that little bit of quality when he needs it and when we need him to do that. And I think someone was saying today, I think you were saying, Craig, that he's under contract till he's 32 or something crazy like
5
that.
more years.
Yeah, it's just like
27.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you see any issues with what we've got, Craig, or are you happy enough that we've got enough quality in the starting lineup? We've got a few players, obviously, if we get them back from injury, that have got that quality. Obviously, we're still missing Shelby as well, remember. Where are the impacts from the sub if we need that extra little bit of quality going to come from?
Ryan Fraser, when fit, he's got that tenacity to change a game. He's just got bags of energy, but his end product is probably lacking, probably worse than Miggy's is at the minute, to be honest. That's pretty much it, to be honest. I've made my feelings very clear on Jacob Murphy over the past few weeks and months and whatever. Not a fan of his by any stretch. And Longstaff, he can go missing in games or he can shine in games. He's very, very unpredictable and very inconsistent, albeit he is getting better in that department. He's getting back to his old self like he was under Rafa. But the overall bench and depth in squad is what could hamper our real push up the table if we want to maybe go for that top 6. I know that's a massive dream and it's a huge, huge ask, but that's what could hamper us, especially if we're going to go on a cup run where you do need strength and depth, and that's just something we just don't have as of right now.
No, for sure. So let's go on to the Wolves team. So we've got Sarr in goal, Kilman, Collins, Castro, Otto. This is based on what we think they played last weekend. Then we've got the midfield 5 of 8 Nuri. I feel like Lee here, like not being able to pronounce names. This is where you want Lee in here doing his podcast. Moutinho, Neves, Nunez, and Neto in midfield. To me, that just is actually a really quality midfield. And if they play that, they're gonna give us some concerns just by the pure numbers that are in there. And then Gonzalo Guedes and Podence up front. Wolves are in a little bit of a weird place right now because they've played the games. They've only got 1 point to show for the first games of the season, and they've only scored 1 goal. And they've got some quality in that side, though. So it is a little bit concerning that they have had this slow start for them. But at some stage, they're going to click and they're going to get some players that are going to hit form, and they're going to be dangerous again. And we saw last season how well they can play when they're on form. So, Craig, I mean, I don't follow Wolves all that strongly, but they definitely do have some standout talent in that midfield, especially some attacking players. What do you make of that squad? Who do you reckon that we're going to actually have to sort of keep an eye on?
That middle 3 of Moutinho, Neves, and Nunez, they could be as big for them as what Bruno, Joe Linton, and Shelby were towards the back end of last season. They are very, very capable players. They can turn a game at the drop of a hat. They've got skill in bags, all 3 of them. They will track back, they will defend, they will push forward, but they're a very cohesive unit as well. They've got a very strong Portuguese feel, and that probably helps them all bond and play well together in that aspect. Kind of like what we tried to do with all the Frenchies a good number of years back, but that just didn't work. But yeah, big, strong Portuguese flavour, and they have some very, very talented players. And one thing I did notice, and I don't know if anybody watched the full 90 minutes against Spurs for them last week, they were playing very, very through the middle, very narrow in terms of play. They didn't use the wingmen much at all, which is somewhere I hope we can capitalise. If Maxi can get out wide and get his head down and run with the ball, we could potentially trouble them there, because, again, if they're compressed in the middle to try and maybe block out our midfield and we can get it out wide, that's where we could maybe hurt them.
Yeah, that's fair enough, actually. I mean, even if they change their lineup to cope with Maxi, then it's pulling them out of their midfield roles, which hopefully frees up space for Joe Linton and Bruno to work their magic. So that's definitely things that you're hoping. And obviously playing that sort of 3 centre-back things, I think it's going to be a long afternoon for Chris Wood. I think he's going to be well marshalled. I'm still not entirely sure why they sold sold Cody. That seemed a bit of a strange decision to me. But it's a very, very good squad. It's interesting that you say it's like very heavy Portuguese feel. Obviously, there's a lot of links there, and they have a lot of Portuguese players. But they all then click into that sort of formation and the style of play quite easily. So it is this natural sort of rotation of players that they have, where they're selling players and bringing new players in that are comfortable with that style of football. Jack, your thoughts on the Wolves team and the game in general?
Well, I heard a stat that Wolves last weekend had more Portuguese players playing for them than Porto and Sporting Lisbon did in their games. So that tells you the way things work at Wolves. I've got to be honest, a lot of their players just merge into the Portuguese players just merge into one for me. Like, I know Moutinho and Neves have been there for a long time, so I know them. Neto has been linked with Arsenal. He was injured really badly last season, but he's been linked with Arsenal for 50 million. And Wolves have also been linked with the Goncalo Ramos from Benfica that we were linked with, that presumably we won't be signing now. But like Guedes and Podence, they merge into one for me. So I did hear that Wolves the reason they sold Cody or let him go is because they were looking at going to a back 4 this season. Okay. So Castro Otto could play right back and Aït-Nouri could come to the left back, and then it would be like a 4-3-3. So yeah, they're a team probably that are still trying to gel. They were quite good last season towards the start of the season, but they were just a bit boring as well. They didn't score many goals, and they didn't show much at all when they came to St James's Park. So the last time we played them at Molineux was the last game before the takeover. Really sort of famous game in some ways for the away end. We're just not at it that day, and they were really miserable, and the whole feel around the place was terrible. So it'll be a bit different this time. Yeah, but it's going to be a difficult game. Interesting to see how it goes, but I think we should be full of confidence. If we get the tactics right, I think we could be on for a good win.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I think if we're on a game, I'm confident that we can control that game. It's going to be a much different test for us than it was last year, as you said. So hopefully we can put that right and maximize on our away support this time, who, as you said, are going to be well and truly up for it. So let's do some quick tips for the game. Craig?
I'm going to go 2-1 away win.
Jack, what's your predictions?
I think I'm going to go 2-0. I think we'll have enough. 2-0 win.
I'm going to go 2-0 as well, because Wolves are not started great. They're not scoring a lot of goals. Our defense is actually rock solid at the moment. Obviously, we've conceded 3 against Man City, but we actually went at them, so we were probably a little bit more vulnerable than we otherwise would be. But we've seen games out. We're doing really well defensively. So, yeah, for me, 2-0, clean sheet, 3rd clean sheet of the game. Nick Pope will dig us out if we need him, and onwards and upwards in the league.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing to just go into games just knowing there's going to be a tactical plan? Like I'm so confident that Eddie Howe and Tyndall are going to have them like a tactical plan bespoke for this exact game. Yeah. So that's just what gives me confidence to think that if the players can execute the plan properly, the tactics, then I think we'll give anybody a good game. And I think we've probably got, when we've got better players, I think there's a good chance that we're gonna win more games than we lose.
Oh, for sure. And I think the big thing for us at the moment is that you're going into games knowing that you're going to compete, not just tactically, but you're going to have players that are well and truly up for the match as well. Even the Brighton game, I mean, the players were there, but Brighton were just a good side on the day. Yeah. But we still tried our best to do something in that game late on. But look, I'm not going to take Wolves lightly, but I do think we will have enough for this one, and it's nice to have that confidence going into games. Predicting wins at last is great.
Makes change.
Right. Oh, indeed. Right then, I think that's gone on long enough. It's been a bit of a jam-packed podcast for today. So let's call things up here. It's been a pleasure. Jack and Craig, thank you very much for joining. And for anyone that's listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Anyone that's on our audio podcast, if you haven't done so already, subscribe along, so sign up and get those notifications. This is absolutely brilliant. We love doing this. So if you've got any questions or feedback for us, we welcome that immensely. Jack, thanks very much for joining.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
And Craig, cheers, mate.
Just you too, mate.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I'll catch everyone later.